Sometimes the most profound changes in life's complex tapestry are announced by times of relative calm. C.S. Lewis, an expert in reading people's hearts, said that God usually chooses to speak to us through the soft whispers of our everyday experiences, rather than the rumble of thunder. As we go out on this adventure of self-discovery, may we keep an eye out for the little clues that point to the possibility of a divine hand in our tale. Through Lewis's teachings, we will come to see how these subtle realizations can set in motion significant changes in our spiritual journey. There is a subtle call to wake up in the middle of life's monotonous march, where each day becomes the same. We don't discover our turning points in life in the din of major epiphanies, but rather in the nooks and crannies where the everyday and the supernatural collide. As Lewis points out, there are times when God uses a whisper rather than a whirlwind to get our attention and make us feel something. Think of the subtle prodding of an enduring idea, the resounding echoes of a dream that never came true, or the quiet dissatisfaction that points to worlds that are out of our reach. These are more than just ideas floating about in our heads. They may be the initial stitches of a sacred fabric being stitched into our life. Lewis would probably say that the most profound realizations come from the most ordinary things. A sunrise that makes us long for something we can't put our finger on. A quote from a book that sticks with us, or a discussion that makes us yearn for more. In the Lewisian meaning, awakening is seeing through the illusion of the material world to the more substantial reality beyond it. The first stirring of the heart implies our part in a great story, a story that God has written, inviting us to begin a voyage of discovery and transformation. This awakening does not yell from the rooftops, but rather murmurs softly within us. Paying heed to these hints helps us understand life as a divine maestro orchestrated symphony, rather than a chaotic sequence of accidents. The evolving tune of our lives is shaped by each note and each pause. This awakening does not come at us suddenly, but rather in stages, like a progressive peeling back of the layers of a blindfold, allowing us to see God, ourselves, and the world through fresh eyes. Embracing these quiet realizations allows us to be receptive to change and the miraculous ways God may alter our narratives. We often find the strength to release our old selves and step into the roles God has prepared for us in His vast cosmic story, in the soft murmur of His voice. Mr. C.S. Lewis made the astute observation that common people are frequently bestowed remarkable fates by adversity. This realization is a potent reminder that our difficult experiences are not only roadblocks, but opportunities for personal development and improvement. We discover both the ugliness of life and the possibility of a divine transformation in the midst of our sorrow. In Lewis's view, God employs sorrow to rouse a world that is otherwise asleep. We tend to be more open to change, more self-aware, and more ready to seek meaning beyond ourselves while we're going through tough times. A fresh chapter in our story, penned by God, can start to sprout from this openness. Reflect on the biblical narrative of Joseph, who endured betrayal, servitude, and incarceration before being promoted to a position that enabled him to save nations from starvation. God was weaving these difficulties into a greater story, not as isolated incidents. Our greatest trials may prove to be stepping stones, like Joseph's, to the destiny God has in store for us. Instead of giving up in the face of adversity, we are encouraged to press on, knowing that God may be using these difficulties to mold us into the people He needs for the next chapter of our journey. Many times the knowledge, fortitude, and compassion we need to fully accept the destinies God has for us are gleaned from the pain we endure. As we go through this, we see that pain serves as a test of our mettle, and also as a channel through which God brings out our best selves. In the midst of suffering, it challenges us to go beyond ourselves and find meaning. In light of this, we may face adversity head-on with faith and bravery, knowing that it is a chance to learn and change, drawing us closer to God's will for our lives. Then we can see that when we go through tough times, it's because God is working on our lives, shaping us to be more fruitful. Pruning is like tending to a garden. It hurts, but the growth that comes after it is worth it. When we face adversity head-on, believing in being courageous, God can use it to make us stronger and give our suffering meaning. Mr. C.S. In his famous postulate, Lewis states, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." This deep insight motivates our third topic, which is to see our profound and unfulfilled desires as indications that we are meant for something greater, something beyond the physical realm. Lewis had the belief that the things we truly long for, the things that money can't buy, are not random human needs, but rather the voice of our souls beckoning us back to our rightful place. These longings that go unfulfilled, these hints of a greater meaning, are signs that our stories have a purpose beyond this life and are destined to be part of a timeless tale that the divine is crafting. The pull of eternity in our souls is most palpable when we encounter periods of unexplainable yearning, when things like beauty, love, or awe make us hungry for more. These aren't just passing feelings. They are evidence that we are a part of a greater divine narrative. In the midst of the mundane and transient, this need for something greater serves as a lighthouse that leads us to the shores of a profound spiritual reality. It challenges us to consider the idea that our inner unease may be a purposeful attempt to draw us closer to God, who is the ultimate giver of happiness. Because they both bring us to a reality beyond our comprehension, Lewis considered desire and suffering as complementary spiritual experiences. When we are humbled by suffering, we are more open to receiving divine grace. But when we are elevated by desire, we are drawn toward the fullness that is in God. Through this process, our lives are molded by the Creator's meticulous hand into an ongoing journey of seeking connection and significance. Thus, when we confront our struggles and acknowledge our innermost longings, we make room in our hearts for the potential of change and discover a way back to our rightful place in God's plan for our lives. Inspiring us to take action, these eternal echoes urge us to discover our role in the vast story of God. By doing so, they serve as a constant reminder that we are eternal souls formed for a realm beyond this earth. Listening closely to these heavenly messages prepares us to be vessels through which God can perform His redemptive work. We start to perceive our life as more of a journey toward a divine horizon, where all of our desires are fulfilled, and our longings lead us back to our Creator, rather than a collection of random happenings. What we frequently mistake for random occurrences actually represents God's subtle handiwork in our lives. as C.S. Lewis so eloquently put it. He famously said that God uses coincidences as a cover story, suggesting that there is a delicate hand of divine orchestration at work in our lives. This topic explores the idea of fortuitous coincidences and providence, looking at how these chance meetings and happenings can really be indications that God is writing our story and leading us in the direction He wants us to go. Think about the chance meetings that change our lives, the unexpected possibilities that present themselves at the right time, or the seemingly random sequence of events that, looking back, seems too good to be true. These seemingly insignificant instances, which are typically explained away as mere chance, could actually represent divine interventions in our lives. According to Lewis, nothing happens by chance. Rather, each interaction and occurrence is a stroke of God's brush in the grand design He is constructing. Those serendipitous moments, when everything falls into place just so, are evidence that a higher power is subtly directing our lives. Every element, no matter how minor it may appear, has its place and purpose, and they remind us that we are part of a far broader story than what we can conceive. This story was written by the Creator Himself. Thus, as we go about our everyday lives, we are encouraged to pay close attention to the signs and movements from on high, to see God's handiwork even in the most unlikely of situations. Doing so allows us to perceive the miraculous in the mundane and the sacred in the commonplace, which in turn opens our minds and hearts to the awe-inspiring providence of God in our lives. This means that our trip becomes more like a waltz with the divine, with an all-powerful hand guiding us step by step as we near our actual home. According to Lewis, these occurrences are not coincidental, but rather designed by a higher power to enrich our lives in some way. They are constant reminders that our stories are not isolated incidents, but rather components of a larger, interrelated tale in which the role of each individual and every event is significant to the unfolding divine drama. We are encouraged to delve deeper into the details in order to see the bigger picture and the divine hand at work in our lives. According to this view, we should have faith in life's natural progression, be flexible in the face of change, and take solace in the fact that, underneath the surface of seemingly random events, there is really a grand design in which we are all involved. Grasping the hand-picked significance of these fortunate occurrences helps us to sharpen our perception of the opportunities God presents, our openness to His guidance, and the constant conversation between our wishes and His will. Our fifth subject, which draws on the deep thinking of C.S. Lewis, investigates how trusting in God can affect our lives, particularly when we are faced with change and uncertainty. Trusting in God as our guiding light through life's storms was a common theme in Lewis's descriptions of faith as a journey through dark valleys and bright peaks. In the midst of the mayhem around us, a profound serenity can surround us. According to Lewis, this calm is evidence that God is with us and that He will lead us through the trials that lie ahead. Often we discover the fortitude to persevere and the bravery to welcome the new chapters of our tale when we sit quietly in God's sovereignty and let our emotions be quiet. Faith, according to Lewis, is not a means of evading reality, but of being more fully immersed in it. If our faith is genuine, we can see past outward signs and know that God is at work in everything. Even in the midst of chaos, and doubt. If we put our complete confidence in God, He can turn our difficulties into strengths and our fears into courage. Believing that God has a plan for everything that happens to us, this type of faith compels us to give Him control of our fears and concerns. All of life's ups and downs are skillfully interwoven by God, who writes each line with purpose, so that they may contribute to our ultimate benefit. Thus, in times of doubt, we are encouraged to maintain an open heart and a mind that may receive divine guidance, for He is with us at all times, leading the way with love and wisdom. We have a better grasp of our place in creation when we put our trust in God. In the grand narrative that God is weaving, we do not only sit on the sidelines, but rather take part. Each trusting choice and faithful deed adds a note to our life symphony, which ultimately reflects the majesty of our Maker. We find true calm and purpose as we live with this trust, knowing that even if our lives are full of surprises, we are safe in God's hands. He knows our exact whereabouts and destiny. This peace doesn't come from having nothing to worry about, but rather from having unwavering faith in the One who is in control of each day. A tranquil conviction that the author of our faith is at our side, directing our every step. A calm that, as Lewis would put it, beyond all comprehension. Adopting this self-assuredness requires letting go of the impulse to be in charge, of the pen with which we wrestle to create our own narratives. What this means is that we can relax, knowing that there is a reason for every pause and sentence, even though we don't always comprehend them. By taking this trusting stance, we make room for God to undertake the transforming work He wants to do in our lives. We surrender to His will for our life, and He guides us not just to safety in the midst of the storm, but also to a closer fellowship with Himself. In this place of trust, we are ready to receive the changes that God is including into our story. In keeping with C.S. Lewis, we go into the themes of loss, yearning, fate, and faith, with each turn illuminating ways in which God is changing our narrative. A spiritual journey, in Lewis's view, is a dance between humanity and God, in which our frailties are made strong by God's might and our worries are turned into faith. When we believe, we yield to God's will and become nearer to His heart. In coincidences, we see the unseen hand of God at work. In longing, we discover a chance to grow. And in sorrow, we discover a chance to grow. When you commit to this dance, you acknowledge that your every move, even your mistakes, are contributing to the bigger picture. Giving up to God's will allows us to experience liberation and joy, no matter how bad things get. An active surrender that changes us and brings us into harmony with the divine story is what it means to trust in God, not a passive acceptance. So, as we go along this path, we are encouraged to listen for God's voice in the midst of our everyday experiences, to discover grace and order in the midst of disorder, and to rest assured in the knowledge that He is with us at all times. Every difficulty turns into a test of our mettle, every yearning into a glimpse of our eternal home, and every serendipitous event into evidence of a gentle hand guiding us. Finally, we learn that it is not the absence of storms, but God's ever-present presence, who leads and sustains us, that brings us genuine peace. When we put our faith in Him, He can change and mold us according to His perfect design, writing our story. So our lives are transformed into an everlasting symphony of faith, hope, and love, a living testimony of God's glory. Click the like button to let us know if this prayer was a comfort to you. More encouraging words and deeper understanding of God's Word are available on our channel, which we welcome you to subscribe to. Let us journey through life's ups and downs, experiencing His grace and love as we strengthen our faith. Our community is grateful to have you as a member.